It's been a while since I've done one of these, and while working on this one, I've realized that I've missed those. Those early Windows games had a very specific touch to them, at least those that did not release under DOS as well. Anyway, let's not waste any more time and check what I've prepared for today. Hunter x Hunted is a sci-fi side-view action platformer, and a pretty fun one at that, even if portraying its world in grim colors. The future of 2015, when the game takes place, is a dystopian nightmare. We've been invaded. Yep, I don't know what happened, maybe Batman was on holidays off planet or ill or whatever, but that's the situation that we face. The aliens came unexpectedly, they are here and it doesn't look like they're planning to leave anytime soon. They've also exterminated whomever stood in their way or was deemed too old to be useful, and enslaved the rest of us, and put us to work in the labor camps. I think that we've already established that the aliens are truly nasty and cruel bunch. If all that wasn't enough though, they also run inhumanly violent games so-called Hunter x Hunted, where other aliens from the planet Kulrati, no relation to Kilrafi, are made to hunt each other and humans. These games run on lethal arenas created in the ruins of the many former human cities. Our game, and not the in-game game, I know, confusing, tells the story of Jake and Garfi Den, who plan on escaping the oppression, so as you can probably guess, Hunter x Hunted can be played alone as much as it can be played with a friend. In single player there's 65 missions to complete, with the first few serving as a tutorial. Each mission has a certain objective, completion of which is required for the door to the next stage to open. Naturally, the levels are filled with enemies who are there to stop you in your tracks. And on top of that, you'll also have to do some environmental puzzling here and there, but most of the time it'll be keys and keycards related, so nothing too demanding. In multiplayer, each of the players controls one of the protagonists, and it can be played either head-to-head or in co-op. There's way fewer missions in this mode, but it's a fun one, only if you've someone else to play the game with, that is. Hunter x Hunted uses a few neat techniques for its gameplay, and they're rather fresh and enjoyable. For one, there are two 2D planes between which you can move freely, either for traversal or to avoid getting shot, or for a plethora of other reasons really. It is a fun mechanic and definitely adds a lot to the playability. Then there are secret areas, usually uncovered by pushing against the wall for a few seconds in correct spots. There aren't as many of them as there were in Fury of the Fairies, but there's plenty enough to keep you pressing all the random walls like a lunatic anyway. And finally, a pretty cool zooming effect whenever entering doorways. It may not add anything mechanically, but it's a nice addition to the slew of in-game effects. And since we're on the subject, both graphics and sounds are excellent, and round up the gameplay package with appropriately good presentation. While some levels may be a bit more tough than you expect them to be as compared to the rest of the game, and few others feel repeatable, Hunter x Hunted overall is excellent, and I can wholeheartedly recommend it to anyone who enjoys action games. Would you forgive me and accept if I just said that Descent 2 is same as Descent 1 but newer and better? You wouldn't? Oh, okay, then tough, cause that's precisely what it is. Not only obviously, but in essence, if I was to describe it in the only one sentence, that's what I would have said. But if you'd like to know more, then it's also a full 3D all-axis sci-fi shooter with an unparalleled freedom of movement. Sure, it could be credited to the fact that you control a flying drone/ship of sorts, but whatever, it changes nothing. In no other shooter of the time you get to move in such freeform and natural way. As I was saying, you're flying your one-man ship in a three-dimensional environment, shooting numerous kinds of enemies, both ships and robots. And all of these are different, have unique to them skills and capabilities. Like releasing smaller drones that attack you or stealing from you, there's a lot of them is what I'm saying. And they all require a different approach, which not only keeps the game entertaining for longer, but forces you to adapt and change your in-game strategy on the fly. Some may find it troublesome, I think it keeps Descent 2 fresh and fun. Same as in first Descent, most of the action takes place in closed-off maze-like in-design complexes, but this time the enemy AI have been considerably improved and apparently can learn over time and even counter some of your tactics. The game is 30 levels strong, with the last one taking place inside the enemy mothership. It's worth pointing out that for whatever the reason, the first few are much less interesting and fun than the rest of them, but I suppose it's to keep them easier, so it's sorta a tutorial-like experience. Compared to original, Descent 2 offers new weapons, new types of enemies, afterburner, energy to shield converter, and improved graphics and sounds. So as you can see, whichever words I dress it in, the original sentence still stands correct. Descent 2 is Descent 1, but better. And if you like the first game, you'll love the second. Disney's Aladdin is arguably the best interpretation of the 1992's movie to date. And sure, there was also one on SNES too, and it was a damn good one, but it wasn't as good. At least not in my eyes. This Aladdin, however, is an action platformer based on the locations in the movie, so you'll get to visit all the cool places found in it, like Agrabah, Cave of Wonders, and even Sultan's Dungeon. And you play as the titular hero, armed with a sword and a bucket of apple. Because, you know, who doesn't carry a vast supply of apples with them, right? Game logic. On your way to the confrontation with the Sultan, you have to get through several beautifully recreated and designed levels of platforming goodness, and as you go about it, you may unlock either Genie or Abu bonus stages. And they're a nice break from usual platforming routine, even if they're not as well designed as the rest of the game is. First is a game of luck played for apples, gems and extra lives. In second, you control the little monkey catching items falling from the sky and dodging dangerous objects like pots and rocks. What Disney's Aladdin has been best known for though are the silky smooth animations, which are a result of developers collaborating with Disney's animators, and it's leagues ahead in quality as compared to other Disney games like The Lion King or The Jungle Book. For me, however, it was always the soundtrack that took the cake with this one. It's just so good, especially in the first level. The game's worth playing just to listen to it, even if you don't enjoy platformers. Oh, and Windows version is the same as DOS, but in, well, a window. Master of Orion 2 Battle of Antares is a sci-fi turn-based 4X strategy game set in space, and the title that I really did not want to talk about. Not because I didn't like it, quite the contrary, but because I sort of fear of doing so. It's such a huge and iconic game that everyone's bound to have an opinion about it, and many will be just waiting there at the edge of their keyboards to point out all the omissions. On the other hand, it's a game that cannot be skipped in a video like this one, so whether I feel comfortable doing so or not, I have to cover it. M002 is a sequel to the first game, but in reality it remakes it from scratch, fixing what required doing so and improving in many areas to become this de facto benchmark for turn-based space strategies for the years to come. A game that others will strive to become or surpass and hardly any ever will manage to touch. Even to this day, M002 is a definition of 4X, so extra, extreme, exciting, experience, or explore, expand, exploit and exterminate. Both fit as well in my eyes. And it puts you in shoes, where appropriate that is, of one of the 13 available alien species that all want to conquer the surrounding star systems and become the titular Master of Orion, an elusive title that has literally no meaning behind it whatsoever. All that said, if any of the 13 default races is not to your liking, you can always customize your own, which I would recommend if you've played plenty enough games with others. Master of Orion 2 can be won in one of three ways, and interestingly enough, not all are military. First is through conquest of all others, which is quite obvious winning condition, as when you're the last race left, you quite obviously won, or lost, depending on how you want to look at it. Then there is diplomatic victory, for which you need to be voted as the supreme leader of the galaxy. And finally, the victory that supports the game's title, meaning finding the race of Antares and destroying them, as you do. Anyway, while there may only be three, the road to either will be a very long one, full of conflicts and many twists and turns, and may even make you re-evaluate mid-game how you want to try to win it all. But in games like M002 or Civilization, it's hardly ever all about the final victory. And most of the time, the fun comes from the journey to that elusive achievement, rather than it in particular. So you'll be responsible for everything, micro and macro managing of your entire empire to the last minuscule detail. You'll manage your conquered planet's natural resources, you build various facilities and ships for your fleet too, you'll explore the galaxy, set out new colonies, engage in diplomacy, trade, or even war. And combat is turn-based and pretty tactical. Perhaps not on the level of some games that base their whole premise on it, but it's deep enough to fit within M002's other intertwined mechanics. You will also engage in a lot of research, improving technological standing of your race, and utilize these new discoveries to develop faster and better than the others. But it's not all about math and min-maxing your race to the top. There are also random events that happen from time to time, strange artifacts that can appear in orbits of unexplored planets, and even wormholes, allowing for near-instantaneous traversal between far-off star systems. And all that is just a tip of an iceberg that Master of Orion 2 is. It's a ginormous game is what I'm saying here. And if you're a fan of deep and engaging strategies, and even better have at least a passing interest in space, it's definitely a title to steal days, if not weeks, from your life. Oh, and presentation aside, since it's appropriately simple for the genre, it's still as playable today as it was when it originally released. Discworld 2 The Mortality Bytes is a point-and-click adventure game based on the Terry Pratchett's series of humorous fantasy novels set on a mythical Discworld. Once again, you're Rincewind, a laughingstock of a whole wizarding world, and you're tasked with a burden of coercing Death himself out of his impromptu retirement and back to his duties. A task and a half, if you ask me. Sounds interesting though, right? Well, it is, and most importantly, it's hella fun. And you know what? That's also exactly why majority of all players fought 2 in 1996. And Discworld 2 was as big, if not bigger commercial success than the first game. Obviously, as in most other adventure games, both conversations and inventory puzzles are required to progress, and they are as hilarious as you can expect them to be coming from an earlier game. While sound design is on comparable level to first Discworld, the graphics have been hugely improved and are now in full high-color, high-resolution SVGA mode. And if I'm to be frank with you, they look as if they were taken straight out of a cartoon. They're just beautiful, so detailed and so smooth, but personally, I like those older pixelated ones better. That's me, however, and objectively speaking, second Discworld's overall presentation is on a much higher quality level than previously. Discworld 2 came out in an interesting time when adventure games were slowly being phased out by other genres, overtaking them in popularity, especially RTS and FPS that were the new it. So if you're a fan of point and clickers, seek it out as it's one of the few last good ones, at least for another decade or so. Monster Truck Madness is precisely that, a madness. It doesn't use realistic physics, it doesn't pretend to be a simulator, and it doesn't really care about the tracks even if it's a racer. They're there, but you don't really have to stick to the original layout. And most of all, it allows you to release your inner monster and just go crazy and have fun. Now, it's pretty clear from the get-go as you're watching the footage that the presentation-wise it didn't age too well. But you gotta remember that it was one of the very first few direct 3D games using a new 3D subset of DirectX libraries. Libraries that may have been a tad crude initially, but with time a whole gaming world moved to them, at least on the PC side of things. One way or another, while graphics are important, we don't play games for graphics alone, but to have fun. And if you enjoy over-the-top games, have a little redneck in you, just like I do, you'll love Monster Truck Madness. It features a pretty wide selection of courses, from realistically looking to those that border on impossible, and 8 entirely different vehicles to choose from, all appropriately so out of this world. It can be played in either circuit, rally, drag or tournament mode, and if you enjoy physically impossible high jumps, destruction of roadside elements and finding your own shortcuts and going off course, you'll have a lot of fun in this one. It actually encourages not following the track layout, but going off-road and cutting corners, so to speak, all to overtake the opponents. It's worth pointing out that if you don't like these types of arcade racers or are into simulations, there's nothing in Monster Truck Madness that you could enjoy. Not a single thing. But if you like to give it into a little craziness from time to time, and just seek freedom, fun and not accuracy, then it's an excellent title to last an afternoon in. When Flight Unlimited came out, its only competition in the form of Microsoft Flight Simulator instantly began to look like an old and museum-worthy art piece. A king of the old became a laughingstock of the new. Flight Unlimited was just that. Unlimited. Seemingly perhaps, but to my teen eyes it really was. And it gave you a chance to take a few completely different civilian aircrafts for a spin. Extra 300S, Belanka Decathlon, Sukhoi Su-31, Pitts S-2B, and Grob S-103. If you're into avionics, these probably tell you everything that you need to know about the game, but if you're like me, then you care more about flying than code-like names that sounded more like rare and exotic diseases than anything else. Flight Unlimited went one step further than any simulation before and allowed you to fly around predefined locations perfectly represented in satellite photos-based graphics using as close to real-life physics as 1995 allowed for. Yes, 1995, because it originally released for DOS. And this 1996 Windows version is really just a port. The game lets you take part in aerobics competitions or even learn how to fly by taking easy but comprehensive 34 lessons strong course. If you're someone who enjoyed Microsoft Flight Simulator at the time, seeing Flight Unlimited in action was just mind-blowing. Today, it's obviously not anymore, especially that we have this new and amazing Flight Simulator 20 now, but if you enjoy those older simulations, you may still find something fun here. Doom came in 1993 and overnight changed the world. It spread like a virus and caused a worldwide first-person shooter pandemic. A disease that for the first few years seemed incurable and nearly everyone fell a victim to. But id Software did not rest on their laurels and kept innovating. So 3 years later they came back with Quake. Many may not agree with the sentiment, but I feel that it may have been even more important title in the history of gaming than Doom was. Sure, it was not credited to be the first shooter or even first modern shooter, but it was most likely the first one in full real 3D. Everything in it was made using polygons, and the engine offered a true generational leap as compared to the titles that came before. Sure, early 3D games may have not aged too well, but Quake somehow manages to look great even today. I mean, it featured true and not fake multi-story levels, smooth character animations, realistic lighting model and simulated physics. All this may not seem so great when compared to today's games, but back then it was revolutionary. I'm not sure if that's the ever-present darkness in its level design, gothic aesthetics or grim and scary atmosphere, but Quake is still a pleasure to see in motion. And whenever I get a chance to launch it, be it in its classic iteration or through dozen or so modern remakes, I still feel like a kid smiling at the screen, smiling at my demise. as I'm not as proficient at shooters as I used to be, but I smile nonetheless. Story-wise, if you care for it, an alien forces started invading Earth and it's believed that they come from another dimension using teleporter gates, a tech that we clearly don't have, appearing wherever and whenever they please and causing mayhem and destruction. The enemy forces were codenamed Quake, and you play as the nameless soldier, an 80s/90s hero kind of a guy, who after arriving at his home base and discovering that Quake overran it and killed everyone, decides to take the fight to the enemy by using one of their leftover teleporters and enact revenge upon them. Anyone else would fail, as the overwhelming forces of evil are way too much for world's armies, not to mention a single soldier, but you're you and you will win. I mean, when I look at you, I think Batman, but better, faster, stronger and smarter.
I'm Batman.
No, yeah, but okay. So, apparently I'm to say aloud that no one's as smart as Man-Bat is, and he's the world's greatest detective. Oddly enough, he took no offense to anything else I mentioned. Anyway, Quake is as great today as it was when it released, and it can be enjoyed in both single-player campaign and online multiplayer. Go and play it. Screamer 2. I don't care what anyone thinks. Neither you, nor Batman, anyone. Screamer 2 is the best DOS arcade racer ever made, and I will defend the notion till the day I die, because I have very fond and personal memories of it. It's a game that I played with my father for months every single day, beating each other's times by just a little and always competing to see who'd come on top. Sad to admit, but ultimately I was nowhere near as good as he was, and he always somehow managed to better my score. Be it by perseverance and just trying time after time until he did, or just natural skills that he had and I never did. It's irrelevant. Thing is, we played it for a long while together, and that's probably why Screamer 2 is what my equivalent of playing catch with him would be. He's still here, don't get this melancholy-filled story wrong, he's just much older and doesn't care about gaming whatsoever. He spends his days either cultivating his vegetable gardens or watching sports, exclusively. But enough about me. Screamer 2 is an excellent arcade rally racer, where you get to compete against CPU or another player on numerous tracks all around the world. They're all mainly rally tracks, but an occasional city section pops up here and there too. These not only differ in location, but also surface type and how cars react to them, which may not seem anything special today, but back then it was really fresh having to adjust your driving to different conditions. Even more so, there's 4 cars to choose from, all fictional but very unique to one another, and handling entirely differently. Generally speaking, they can be simplified to rear-wheel drive cars being the fastest, front-wheel drive ones being the easiest to steer, and all-wheel drive to fall somewhere between the earlier two. But all that aside, what made Screamer 2 great was not the choice of cars or trucks or even incredible presentation. It was the fun that it provided. I mean, if you were to put it in the arcades, mount a coin slot on the cabinet running it and leave it there, I can pretty much guarantee that it would see a constant inflow of coins. It's fast, it's furious, and that's not a pun, it's incredibly responsive, and because of the slight rubber banding, which I'm usually not a fan of, it keeps all races against CPU exciting and you're on the edge of your seat. It's fantastic. Screamer 2 supports both VGA and SVGA output, and if you have a beefy enough retro PC or run it through emulation, the latter is the way to go, as its presentation is literally dreamlike. There are tons of details on the track itself, on roadside objects and vegetation, the cars are beautiful, and there's a lot of little touches here and there, like packs of birds flying by or something happening in the background that you would not notice in the heat of the race, but it's more than obvious while watching footage of the game when not playing. There are all those tiny little details, those seemingly invisible touches of perfection that make Screamer 2 such a marvel. Oh, and it also supports split-screen multiplayer if you prefer it to playing alternating, but it adds to the hardware requirements a bit more too. So while I remember having no issues playing it in SVGA alone, in split-screen it ran at just a few frames per second and I had to revert to VGA. Whatever, if there's one thing I want you to take from me talking about it, is that Screamer 2 is excellent and an incredible racer if you like those to be arcade and not simulations. SimCopter is an unusual game, because as a standalone title being a sort of very simplified civilian helicopter simulation, it's an average game at best. But it's not just that, and that's what makes it so special. It's a game by Maxis that, other than the built-in career, which sees you jumping from city to city, solving various crises and helping the officials with problems that they're having, so fires, traffic jams, arresting criminals, controlling riots, moving citizens to hospitals and transporting passengers among others, is most of all a game that's very tightly connected with the SimCity 2000. Yes, the very same, excellent and one of the best city builders of yesteryears. All because it allows you to load pretty much any city created with the game in SimCopter and play it. Now, I don't have to tell you how exciting it was for a young city planner in me that saw with eyes of his imagination how cool it would be to fly around my own metropolis, giving it the second life, so to speak, in a different, more virtual environment. And you know what? For the most part, for a week or so, it was actually pretty cool and fun being able to explore the cities I've built and fly around them with one of 9 included copters. The missions were varied enough to keep me engaged, especially that you earn money for this that you can later on use to either buy a new helicopter or additional equipment for it to be able to tackle new emerging situations with more efficiency. The sense of progression, even if in limited manner, was definitely there. But few days in, after a couple of dozens of missions and checking out some of my favorite creations, the novelty wore off. And I don't want to counter something that I said today earlier on when talking about a different game, but the main reason here were the graphics. After a while they just blurred together into a single mass of grey and felt samey. From then onward, I couldn't enjoy SimCopter anymore. Now, this may be an issue specific to me, but that's how I ended up feeling, so I'm letting you know to prepare for such a possibility, regardless of how small it may be. One way or another, if you decide to play it for hours on end or just check it out, SimCopter is a very interesting piece of software and all fans of SimCity 2000 should check it out of curiosity if nothing else at least. Pretty cool games in today's episode, don't you think? I was meaning to release the Windows-based video earlier on, but I was first on a DOS rush that then quickly morphed into an Amiga frenzy, so a Windows refresher was a good choice for today. Anyway, do you remember any of the games from the video? Any fond memories of them at all? Let me know in the comments below. If you liked the video, hit those like and subscribe buttons below. If you didn't, well then there's thumbs down there too. But I suppose you wouldn't have persevered up to this point if you really didn't. Around 60% of you are not subscribed and there's currently no way of knowing if YouTube will decide to recommend you the next episode or not, other than subscribing and hitting that bell, that is. And when you hit that bell, whenever the new video is out, YouTube will actually send you a small and friendly notification about it, so you wouldn't miss it. If you'd like to support the channel, Patreon and YouTube memberships are a great way of doing so. They will help me release better content and also they get first dibs on all new videos before they're publicly accessible on YouTube. If you can't or don't want to do that though, likes and subscribes are great too. I would like to take a moment here and thank all the YouTube creators from whose videos short bits were taken to serve as a background to my commentary. They're amazing and stars among the retro community. You will find names of their channels at the top of the screen when their footage is running and also in the video description below. For me though, this is all, so have a good one and I'll see you next time. Peace.